Hello and welcome to Conversations with Bend Film Festival. Today we have with us two Oregonians with the film This Is Tim, A Musical Life. Director, producer, and daughter of Tim Ellis, Tiffany Ellis, and well-known Portland musician and family friend Jim Walker join us today. And thank you guys so much for being with us. Tiffany, first let's talk, well, both of you, let's talk about how the film came to be made and why.
Yeah, well, that's always the big question. What inspires a film about a parent? And you know, the time period between his health diagnosis and his passing was very, very short and very, very brief. And I've actually been asked this question a lot, if, you know, I'd considered telling his story and making a film about his life while we were going through that process. And the answer to that is no. It actually only occurred to me probably maybe 3 or 4 months after he'd passed away. I'd been hearing a lot of really amazing stories from former students and fellow musician friends of his. And, you know, it was just really kind of sidelined by just the sheer number of people that he had impacted in his life. And so I think partially to help me through some of my grief, but also to find new ways to connect with him now that he wasn't with us. I decided to start to gather a lot of these stories and collect a lot of the videos that people had been sending me of, you know, old performances or lessons or just all kinds of archival material that was kind of coming out of the woodwork, and decided to put it together and tell his story. So it was a few months after he'd passed away that I started to really think about maybe putting it together.
Was it kind of therapeutic to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. It was super hard in a lot of ways. You know, I was revisiting some really painful periods of, you know, our life and our family life and grieving and just trying to process all of that. At the same time, I'm also getting to see aspects of my dad I hadn't really always seen, you know, the guy on stage cracking jokes all the time and you know, getting to sit down. I think I ended up doing something like 40 interviews with different family friends and musician friends and other producers and songwriters. And, you know, so it was amazing to get to connect with all of these people in a different way. And I mean, honestly, Jim, how often would you and I be on the phone together if we hadn't gone through this whole process? You know, like we would still be connected, yeah, right, because we're, you know, but I feel like we've probably extended the friendship or the depth of our connection through the process of making this film, which has been really an absolute blessing, more than I realized it would be, I think, when I first started.
It was impressive, all that footage you found. That was amazing.
Oh, it was like something like I think we ended up with about 350 or 400 hours of material.
Oh my God.
I mean, everything from like performance footage from the early 80s, and I had 50 episodes of his like 90s fabulous public access music show. Yeah,
guitar
it was
lessons.
What's that?
Guitar lessons.
Oh, and guitar lessons. Yeah. And then I was always that like weird kid with the VHS recorder on my shoulder, you know, making family stories and everything. So, you know, we had hundreds of tapes of, you know, like family plays that we put on. And my day in the life of an Ellis family is actually my first documentary. So it premiered in this film in a sort of meta moment. So yeah, we had a ton to work through, and obviously, you know, we left a lot on the cutting room floor. Right. But you know, there was just so much material to work from. It was really amazing to get to go through all of it. And I worked with an amazing editor, Beth Siegel, who she, you know, she sort of has a surgeon's eye for cutting a lot of this material and, you know, really helping tell the story in a very visual, dynamic way. But yeah, there was a lot we left out.
As always.
Right.
Jim, tell us how you first met the family and Tim and became friends.
When I first moved to Portland in 1993, I was told that I did jingle singing. I sang jingles down in Los Angeles. And I was told that, you know, there wasn't that much of a that kind of market in Portland, but that if the guy I should talk to is Tim Ellis. And so I was like, okay, Tim Ellis. So I called him. He didn't call me back. So like a week went by, called him again, didn't call me back, and went on with my life. And 3 weeks later, still nothing. I tried him again. Finally, I went, well, this guy doesn't want to talk to me. And about maybe 5 or 6 weeks later, all of a sudden I get this call like 8 o'clock in the morning. It's like, yeah, this is Tim Ellis. What do you need? And I went, I just wanted to meet you. I'm new in town. He goes, yeah, okay. You can meet me at my studio at 7 a.m. on Wednesday. And I went, okay. And there was this pause because I think that he didn't think I was going to bite. And and I did. And I met him at 7 o'clock in the morning at his old studio. And he kind of gave me gave me the once over of the studio, and then was like, yeah, well, can't really do anything for you. But anyway, nice to meet you. I was like, okay. And shortly after that, I met Craig Crothers, and the two of us became friends. And then Craig said, you know, you should be in my band. And I went, really? Doing what? And he goes, playing keyboards. We're losing our keyboard player. You should be the keyboard player. And I went, okay. And he goes, so come to a gig and play with us. And I was like, a gig? What about rehearsal? He goes, no, we don't rehearse. Okay. So I show up at this gig, and there's Tim. He's the guitar player. And I don't think Tim was interested in knowing me or interacting with me in any way. I think he thought it was just a bunch of jive or whatever. And I don't know, little by little, we just started to bond over silly things. And pretty soon we were just thick as thieves. And Craig ended up moving to Nashville. And all of a sudden we were like, you want to keep doing this? And we were like, yeah. So we just went on as a duo from there. And it was just, 20 something years of fun. I don't think there was a harsh word spoken between us in all that time. And we just had a blast playing gigs, and it was just nothing but fun. And I wish I had something like that. I wish there was a lesson in all that. Like, well, you shouldn't. No, there was nothing. It was just really super fun for 20 something years.
That's amazing. Well, tell us some of your favorite stories about Tim.
I think that the time when I first realized kind of who he was, we were playing with the Craig Crothers Trio, the three of us, in Bend, actually, somewhere, and they put us up at like a band condo after the gig, and we'd been drinking, the three of us, and we were kind of hanging out afterwards in this band condo. And I remember I was sitting on this couch, and there was a loft area up above, and I thought to myself, I'm going to run as fast as I can across this room, jump on that couch right there, and try to jump onto the loft. That's just, I thought it in my head.
As you do.
Yeah, as one does. Yeah. And I jumped up and I started to run toward the couch. And as I put my foot on the couch, there was a hand on top of my head. And I looked up as I was jumping up, and Tim was jumping up over me onto the loft. And I suddenly realized, like, Tim has some, I think he's 5 seconds psychic. And that's how we interacted when we'd play live. He would always be able to anticipate anything you were going to do musically. You'd lean over and go, oh, there's a bridge here. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And he'd always land on the right notes, even if he hadn't heard the song before. And it's just some kind of miraculous thing going on in his mind. But yeah, I'll never forget, like, him hitting the top of the loft and going over, and me falling kind of like sadly off to the side and falling off the side of the couch and hurting myself, and being like, oh, Tim Ellis, that's pretty wild.
Oh my gosh. Well, Tiffany, tell us what it was like. We got an idea of what it was like for you growing up in that household, and but tell us some of the things that we didn't see.
Oh gosh. Well, it's funny because, I feel like there are two sides to my dad. There's like the wild child musician, crazy side of him who's jumping off of sofas and knocking people over and playing all kinds of wild shenanigans. And then there's like the really serious, responsible, make good choices, don't mess around kind of side of him. And we saw mostly the more serious parental side growing up. I mean, as you would expect, there were 6 kids, and we're all wildly different, but like loud and opinionated. And, you know, of course we get that from our dad too. So, you know, I think we really saw the disciplinarian and the guy who had high expectations for all of us growing up. That said, I mean, we were also a really artistic, fun, playful household. And, you know, we actually, every couple of years, we would go down to Bend for family vacation. And, you know, and that's when he would golf and he would relax. He'd be barbecuing every night. And we, you know, have all kinds of outdoor adventures. But when we were home, it was a little bit more serious and a little bit more like, all right, well, you got straight A's. That's easy to do when that's the only thing you do. So what else do you have going on in your life? You know? So it was sort of this like expectation of overachievement. But then as I got older, and, you know, filmmaking is obviously, it's a different industry than music, but a lot of it requires a similar level of gumption and hustle, I think, or just ability to roll with the unknown. There's no one career path that defines success, right? And so I think as I was moving into that world as an adult, I began to understand him a little bit more. And we definitely connected as adults, sort of, you know, I would run ideas by him. And there were things that I sometimes wouldn't be so sure he would respond well to. You know, I ended up, it was this sort of weird time in my life. It was as the recession was hitting in 2008, 2009, I'd gotten laid off from an animation studio I'd been working at. Had an opportunity to work at another animation studio, a big place in LA. And at the same time, I had also been offered an opportunity to go back to Australia, where I had done some work as an undergrad, and work with an Aboriginal community. Now, obviously, like financially, it was a massive risk. I'd be moving overseas. There was a giant question mark. And I had a lot of trepidation bringing that question to him, like, so what should I do? I mean, I was literally at a time in my life where I could see, you know, here's the fork in the road. And this is what happens if I take the more expected route, and, you know, stability and regular paycheck and, you know, all of those things that adults often desire. Or do I fly by the seat of my pants and take this risk and do this thing that would be amazing, but also is kind of scary? And I was really unsure how my dad honestly was gonna react to it, because I expected him to be like, well, obviously you would work for the animation studio. That's a no-brainer, right? But instead, I can picture it perfectly in my mind. I'm sitting in the living room. He was on his way out the door to another gig, standing in the doorway, which is usually how conversations would happen in our house. He's running in and out. So you catch him in the doorway, and he kind of thinks, you know, he's nodding, he's thinking, and he's like, well, you know, what are the benefits to going to Australia for this thing? I was like, well, you know, I qualify for this certain visa, which makes it easy. You know, I was under 30 at the time, so I could get this special visa that would give me some flexibility there. I could work, I could live there for a year. But, you know, I don't really know if it's going to work out, Dad. You know, otherwise I could take this job at this other animation house. But, you know, he goes, okay, well, so you'd be gone for a year. You can't really get the visa otherwise. Well, what do you think? If you're gone for a year and you come back, will this animation studio still be around? You know, and it was like he posed it in such a like nonchalant, like, I don't know, is this like massive mega kajillion like corporation still going to exist 365 days from now? I don't know. And I said, well, obviously, Dad, you know. And he just nods to himself and he goes, well, there you go. And there was something about that moment that was very like, I don't know, I'm getting emotional about it, but it was unexpected. Because I felt like, I felt like my dad really understood me in that moment. And it was a decision, or not a decision, it was advice that I think he knew what I wanted his answer to be. And ultimately, as much as he was like the disciplinarian and was the one who's like make good choices and like do good things with your life, I think he also recognized that there's reward and risk. And that was actually how he lived his life. Like, which I learned as I was making this film. He made a lot of really risky choices. He uprooted his family from California when we were very young to go with his band Buster to Portland. Like, he hadn't been to Portland before. He didn't know what the scene was really going to be like, but he had an opportunity and he seized it. And so having that kind of support from my dad in something like, I think a time in my life that was very similar to something he'd been through, I don't know, it was validation, and it was just super supportive and unexpected. So this is a really long-winded answer to your question. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that was a really touching moment in my life and my relationship with my dad, where maybe there was more than meets the eye. He wasn't just the disciplinarian dad who was always telling you to be better, you know?
That's great. Well, and it seemed like in the film that you could see that he would respond to somebody's question like that, like, well, what should I do? And he had that knack. I've never seen it, of just, as you just said, you know, being kind and not making the decision for you. And it was a really, really interesting, a really cool trait. I don't know, Jim, did you see that in him?
Oh yeah, I mean the sort of when we talk about him now with when I talk about him now with other musicians, I mean there's that sort of that weird thing that someone is a born leader, which, like, I don't even get that, like, especially musicians, because usually there's in musicians, everyone's kind of like, well, I don't know, and I'm not slagging on musicians, but musicians are kind of daydreamers, you know, and they kind of like are open to the muse and kind of a little bit, you know, airy fairy kind of stuff. But Tim was always super disciplined and always super pragmatic about whatever was going on. It was like, well, this is the problem. We're solving the problem right now. Whereas everybody else would kind of like bump into each other and go, I don't know what to do. And he could always wrangle everybody. And like, I've said this before, but if he walked into a band where he was the sit-in guitar player on a band that everybody had been together for 5 years, within 10 minutes, you'd be watching Tim for the cues, because he'd be the one who'd be guiding the band and musically directing the band. And it's just the way he was. It just had this unbelievable knack for getting people to go in a row together, you know, not just musically, but in life, you know, let's move this to here. Okay, great. How do we do that? This way. And
there was never any like yelling or nothing. He would just very nicely, this is what we're going to do, right?
Yeah, I would say the voice was slightly raised, but no yelling.
Yeah, right.
Emphatic, and in a tone that you immediately understand as authoritarian in a good way.
Well, Tiffany, so where has the film screened so far? Have you done a lot of film festivals, or tell us about that?
I've done a handful. So the film screened to a sold out audience, which is super exciting, for its official premiere in Portland last November. And then the plan had been to, you know, do the festival circuit and see what was going on in 2020. And then obviously 2020 has been a wild and wacky year, full of twists and turns and unexpected pandemics. So it's hit the festival circuit, I would say, in the last 6 weeks. So
wow.
Yeah, so we've screened at this Bend Film is our third festival. So we'll kind of see where things go. From there, I've also been talking about potentially doing some public broadcast. We'll see. You know, I feel like the industry is in a really weird place right now, you know, with theatrical screenings, and, you know, there's so much streaming going on, which is amazing. I mean, I feel like in one sense, having the opportunity to stream with these festivals really expands the audience so much more than in person. Though, of course, I'm also like really sad that we aren't all hanging out together at this film festival.
Right.
So, you know, we'll see. Also, I'm working on my next project, which is a baby. So that will have its own.
That's a project for sure.
I'll be giving birth in the next couple months. So depending on how much free time I have, we'll see kind of where else the film will go.
Well, the film is wonderful and you did a great job, and all, you know, it was just, it was really such an inside story. I'm not sure somebody who wasn't related to him could have done that. You did, it was terrific. And
Thanks.
I want to thank you both for being here today. We're really happy to have you. And we want to thank you for making this film because it is important and it's really fun. And keep us in touch. You know, let us know what you're working on next time, and we'll be here.
All right.
Congratulations again. Thank you to both of you, and we'll see you soon. And everybody watch. This is Tim, A Musical Life.
Absolutely. Don't miss it.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks.
Thank you.